Start your engines.
Approaching the midway point of the IndyCar World Series, and Red 5 had taken Nigel Mansell into the championship lead by 14 points from Emerson Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi, the 46-year-old Brazilian, 142 starts in IndyCar racing and still one of the very best around. Alongside him at Penske, Paul Tracy, the Canadian, 24, and climbing rapidly to the top. After a decade of excellence in IndyCar racing, the Newman-Haas team is now world-renowned due to this year's great exploits and the inspirational signing of Nigel Mansell to spearhead their challenge. Carl Haas, co-owner of the team, has worked with great names in the past. His partner is Paul Newman. It's motor racing's version of Butch and Sundance, except all that's outlawed is mediocrity. Coming up in this, the third volume of the Nigel Mansell IndyCar Diary, action and behind-the-scenes footage from 4 more great races. We start at Cleveland, round 8, which produced a never-to-be-forgotten battle between Nigel and Emerson Fittipaldi. On then to Toronto, Canada, on the temporary street course downtown. A weekend of mishaps and misfortune for Nigel and the Newman-Haas team, characterized by 2 high-speed accidents in practice. The problems in Toronto, though, didn't hold them back for long. There are only 2 500-mile races in the IndyCar series, Indianapolis itself and Michigan. Nigel had shown that he'd mastered oval driving. Michigan doesn't have the history of Indianapolis, but it's just as daunting. Hurtling round the 2-mile circuit at 230 miles an hour, it looks smooth enough. But it's a bone-rattling track, not for the faint-hearted. After a below-par weekend in Canada, Nigel needed a good result here at the 10th of the 16-race series, and he got it. A week after Michigan, another celebration. The Big 4-0 clocked up for the world champion, but no sign of Nigel slowing down, despite all that cake. At New Hampshire, he battled it out with Paul Tracy.
Oh, this is it! Mansell takes the lead with 4 laps to go. What a move!
All that and much more besides coming up. Sit tight. Cleveland, Ohio, on the shores of one of the Great Lakes, Lake Erie. A sporting center of the USA with a class football team, the Browns, a top baseball team, the Indians, even a couple of rugby clubs. An industrial center, almost 3 million live in Greater Cleveland. But Nigel Mansell was concerned with just one part of it, the 2.4-mile circuit around the Burkefront Airport, a 10-turn temporary course that in 1987, 1989 and 1992 saw victories for Emerson Fittipaldi.
Good morning, welcome to Cleveland. It's 8:20, we start practice in 10 minutes time. You have the circuit right behind us. It's a very unusual circuit, this one, on an aerodrome. But as you can see, it's quite beautifully set out. The pits very, very wide indeed, no problems there. We have an 80-mile-an-hour speed limit. The hospitality and the grandstands are just behind, and it's quite amazing because pretty well everybody here can have a fantastic view.
The airfield circuit was again totally new to Nigel, but the rest of the team, of course, had considerable experience here.
So hello to all the people.
Good morning.
Chief mechanic here, Tom. He's pretty good some days.
Just some days, though.
You got a copy, Nigel? Yeah. A copy, mate. This is a 1.5-hour session now, and then we get another one from, I think it's 11:10 to 12:10.
Nigel left pit road for his first venture on this unusual course. Many drivers in the past have commented on the lack of reference points on this very flat strip of land, making it hard to judge the apexes and braking into the corners. Well, while these surroundings may be featureless, the track itself is very bumpy and extremely quick. In the first practice session, Nigel was third fastest behind the Penskes, but in the second session, he headed the list with a fastest time of 59.864 seconds. Teammate Mario Andretti was only ninth quickest.
At the front, you know, your turning in is good. I mean, fairly good. But the back end doesn't follow. You know, if you want to hustle it, you want to really let your hair down.
It just jumps in the air.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the session, our car was more stable than
It was really good.
Yeah, in the beginning of the session, yours
when
was
I
the
first
same.
went out.
One driver said a rodeo cowboy would drive best at Cleveland. And certainly in qualifying, Nigel Mansell had a bumpy ride on his way to a time of 59.403, averaging over 143 miles an hour. An excellent time by a rookie at Cleveland, beaten only by the precocious Paul Tracy, 23 hundredths of a second quicker on his best lap. So a Tracy-Mansell front row, with Fittipaldi and Stefan Johansson on row 2. After qualifying, Nigel had a chance to cast his expert eye over the Penske of Fittipaldi.
We are very close on the qualifying times, myself and Nigel. I think it'll be a tough race for both of us. Cleveland, I would say, is the most demanding track for the year physically. And I'm looking forward to be in a good shape the last half an hour of the race, and that's what's going to count.
As you can see from the sweat, it's very, very hot. It's the hottest race, certainly, of this year so far. How do I feel today? A little bit optimistic, more so than this morning, because the Penskes were running real quick, and we've done a lot of changes to our car, and I feel we've made a little bit of progress, but there's no question they're still very, very strong. I share this with you that I'm a little bit sad today not to be performing in the home Grand Prix over there in England, but it's one of those things. But I understand there's 5 British drivers in the top 10, and no doubt when this comes out, obviously the race will be over, but I certainly wish them well standing here Saturday, a good few thousand miles away. And of course all the fans over there, don't forget our thoughts are always with you wherever you are, and have a great weekend at Silverstone.
At the post-qualifying press conference, Nigel appeared with an injured wrist after falling up the steps into the interview truck. Fortunately, nothing was broken, but it was enough to make a man curse. Though not in the hearing of Father Phil, of course. For those drivers needing a spot of guidance, not round the circuit, more of the moral kind, there's a familiar figure who's always around the paddock.
I had a little bit of a misdemeanor yesterday. I'm all bandaged up in my arm here. That's because we went to the press conference yesterday after qualifying and went up about 4-foot steps. And at the top of the steps, misaligned 2 foot to the left of the door. Someone called me as I got onto the top rung, and I turned around to speak to them and carried on walking, and then fell down this big hole before I got to the door. It could have been a lot more serious. I'm pleased to say I've just sprained my wrist and banged my head a little bit, but it's a bit exciting for a lot of people then. Today, expectations, the Penske car is running really well. As I say in America, it's hooked up and it's running hot. I don't know whether we've got enough in reserve to try and come up to their speed, but you know for sure we'll be trying as hard as we possibly can.
Race day, Sunday, July the 11th. Lady driver Linson James swaps notes with her rivals. Both Bobby Rahal, defending IndyCar champion, and Stefan Johansson were hoping for a change in fortune after a disappointing season thus far. As usual, the Mansell fans were out in force, and there was no doubting where the main competition was likely to come from, the Penske stable. Another huge crowd to greet the drivers at the pre-race presentation, many of them there to catch a glimpse of the world champion.
Probably about 7-8 minutes ready to go. We're alongside the Penske car of Paul Tracy's. My teammate Mario's had not a great weekend so far. He's had a few problems, but he's starting in 11th. We have behind us then Emerson Fittipaldi with the other Penske, which is lined up directly behind Paul Tracy. I do believe it's Stefan Johansson alongside Emerson, which of course is another Penske car. And then we have Scott Goodyear and another Lola. The grid today, we should line up and we should have a good start. We've had another exciting drivers briefing where I think we've got some agreement now that the pole man should set the pace, and I'll be taking the lead from Paul on that. He'll be setting the pace coming up to a cone about 200 yards before the green flag, and then and only then we're allowed to accelerate then to the start and finish line. The rules state that you can't improve your grid position until after the start and finish line, so we'll be trying to do that, and also nobody behind is allowed to improve their position until crossing the start and finish line. So hopefully we'll all go into the first corner in good formation, and then it's going to be a struggle to get around the first couple of turns. I'll be pleased when the first lap is over and everything's settled down, and it's gone a lot hotter from this morning, so you know, track conditions probably different, the car settings will be different, but hopefully we'll be somewhere in the ballpark. We'll see you after the race, hopefully with a smile.
Carl Haas with the usual blessing before the start. And then it's down to business.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
So ahead, 85 laps and 201 miles of this unique course at Burke Lakefront Airport. Your commentators are Guy Hobbs and Alvaro Martin.
There it is. Jim Swintal drops the green. There's a lot of jockeying. Mansell on the inside of Paul Tracy moves into turn one and takes the lead. And there's a massive shot. There's Boiselle right there involved. I believe that's Brian Bonner as well is involved in that shunt. As we see the leaders come up around the second turn.
Well, last year here at this race, we had one caution for one lap. It was on the first lap. There's Guerrero, Bobby Rahal, Willie T. Ribbs, and Raul Boesel all out of this race. I think that's Willie T, or is that in fact Brian Bonner?
And there's still jockeying going up front. Paul Tracy doesn't like to be second to none. As we come along, we must be seeing shortly, I believe, Guy, a yellow flag.
Oh, absolutely. Yellow flag's going to be coming out for this situation. 3 cars stuck in turn one.
As they come around the east end of this track, a beautiful track. This is a commuter airport. It's a very, very quick track.
Wide open, plenty of room for overtaking as far as down the straightaways, although most of the overtaking will be done at turn one where we just saw that incident. But we're going to see a yellow flag come out here. The safety vehicle is out on the track. Bobby Rahal is going to be very upset with that, as is Raul Boesel, who is currently second in the championship.
Unbelievable. Bobby Rahal is a native of Medina, Ohio. Let's watch the replay again.
An aerial view should be happening at the back of the screen here, or at the bottom of your screen rather. We see them all piling up, and it looks like Guerrero caught the edge of Boesel, and also there's another car spun off after the turn.
Boy, what a mess.
Another early bath then for defending champion Bobby Rahal. And disappointment too for Roberto Guerrero, who hasn't won an IndyCar race for 6 years. Mansell led Tracy at the restart.
And we're back under green in lap 5 with Nigel Mansell up front, going once again to that dreaded first turn. Tracy second, Fittipaldi's holding up the field in third, then there's Johansson in fourth. A cleaner one, of course. Cooler heads have prevailed.
Everybody taking it nice and easy this time through their single file. Nigel Mansell stretching out his lead just a little bit. Tough corners here, very bumpy. As you see him track out perfectly to the edge of the track. The edge of the track could be a problem. It's been so dry here in Cleveland the last couple of days that all that grass and mud to the side has now become very hard and dusty. And when they just go off the edge, it flicks it all back on the track, which is giving them a lot more marbles to deal with. Here we deal with the complex carousel as they come through onto the main straightaway, almost clipping the wall. Hiro Matsushita with a left rear down on him.
Stefan Johansson is in fourth. He's beginning to put some space between him and the rest of the field.
See Emo going down inside.
Emo has a little bit of trouble to abreast. And finally, he begins. This is Paul Tracy chasing Mansell. Emo having some trouble, head to head. Oh my. Into the turn, and Tracy regains the front running position.
Having lost the lead, Nigel managed to stay with Paul Tracy for several laps. Impressive considering Nigel's car was not handling quite as well through the very quick, bumpy corners. Now these in-car pictures demonstrate, well, how tough the Cleveland circuit is on car and driver. Tracy and Mansell out in front as the first pit stops approached. Robbie Gordon in the AJ Foyt car was, as usual, charging hard behind the leaders. First into the pits was Paul Tracy.
So we'll see how quickly Paul Tracy can get this pit stop done, excluding the entry and exit as he arrives at the Penske crew, taking a full load of fuel. And we're on lap number 29, so it is right on the ball, lap 29, even though they had that yellow caution period.
This is our overhead camera. You're looking at work. It's very quick, 14.3 seconds, and he's out of there.
Nigel pitted immediately after Tracy, the Newman-Haas crew doing a fine job changing the tyres and refueling. However, by the time Nigel rejoined the race, he was 9 seconds behind the leader. The Penske stop had been quicker.
There you see Mario Andretti, Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan.
Danny Sullivan now facing a bit of traffic. Ooh, there's Unser making a correction, kicking up some dust right in front of Danny.
Ooh, getting awfully close.
Oh, there's a tangle. There's a tangle. The two of them come out.
Junior keeps it going around beautifully.
I think the left front wing of Danny Sullivan is definitely out. His car is stalled. That suspension, I'm not sure that's broken. We can't really determine. Certainly, Unser Jr. is back in the race, a street fighter, so the teammates tangle again. And this time, it's Sullivan that comes out the loser.
After the second round of pit stops, Tracy had extended his lead over Nigel to 20 seconds, and the second Penske of Emerson Fittipaldi had closed right up to within a couple of car lengths of Red 5. The battle for second that followed will live long in the memory. A record 56,000 race fans were delighted with this confrontation. Rare indeed that racing at such speed has also such precision and daring.
Emo making his move down the inside as they go into turn 6.
Does he have the space? Watch out, Mansell is out of line. Now it's Emerson. Watch out for those marbles. Could be deadly. Braden moves to the left. Lets Fittipaldi through, but there's still a couple more to go through. There they are, Briard and Johansson. Interesting situation because Briard is really chasing Johansson, even though Briard is lapped.
Emo's making his move again down the inside.
And Mansell doesn't put up with it. Let's see what happens on the outside now.
He's got it.
And he got it. He's got it. He finally has got the second position, but it's still not over by any means. We've got still 12 laps to go. The question is, does Mansell have the grit? Does Mansell have the resistance? How bad is that injury? Can he do this at this point? We'll see.
And unfortunately for Al Unser Jr., he struggled all day, been fighting to stay out there, and now it's finally gone on him. Engine has blown up on him, apparently.
And here's the fight, and Mansell on the inside, trying to take that position and taking it again.
Watch, Emo's going to get it right back.
But Emo
right back.
effect, the slingshot effect, no, he can't get it. What a move, precisely as they come up with back markers. And here's Emo, he's not done yet.
Great battle going on for second place.
Oh, look at that car slide. Emo said it's precisely when you slide these cars that you get into the most trouble as they come through the back markers. Kevin Cogan straight ahead of Nigel Mansell, being asked to move over.
Showing in the blue flag. There you see Scott Brayton, who's pulled alongside pit wall. Here you go, side by side down the main straightaway in front of the grandstand. You can hear the crowd cheering.
Who's going to take the inside line? It's going to be Mansell. Let's see what happens. He's going to take the inside now. Emos takes the inside. Who's going to stay on top?
Well, he's alongside him. That's why you can't see him.
He's ahead. Oh my, another change in position.
Well, Nigel having another look as they go into turn 3.
And he takes it again. What a race. We anticipated at the top of the show that this duel would go on all year, and here he comes again. 2
world championship drivers, winning drivers, battling it out. Emma makes the move at 6 where he made the original move. Nigel unable to answer back at 7. Last time that Emerson Fittipaldi won the Portland race and won the Indianapolis 500 was the same year he went on to win the championship.
You know, Guy, you almost want to take everybody else off the track and let these two have it at each other with a full expansive track in front of them. What a race.
Great battle going on between these two guys. They know how to entertain the crowd. Now Nigel has another look on the inside going into turn 1. He makes it, but this is where Emma bounces back, watching out for the cone.
And Nigel's never changed, never altered that strategy. He takes the inside into turn 1, but takes the outside coming out of it. And Fittipaldi seems to have that angle covered. Let's see if Nigel, the next lap around, decides to change tacks.
I don't think he's going to wait till the next time around.
An exhilarating exhibition, like 2 prize fighters, heavyweights slugging it out with left and right combinations, said one report. Down in the pits, tension was high. Roger Penske instructed Fittipaldi to race on as hard as he liked, but just make sure that he brought the car home in one piece. Tracy did just that, 15 seconds ahead of Fittipaldi. A superb but composed victory, his second win of the season after Long Beach, and only the second of his career. There's talk that he's wanted by Formula One, but he says he knows nothing of that. He's now determined to fight for this title. In Parc Ferme, evidence of just how tough the race had been. Nigel's face says it all. A grueling 94 minutes in intense heat. The trio delighted to sample any kind of liquid in Victory Lane. Expensive champagne employed as a cooling agent. In the end, a race to savor.
I think the great thing is that all credit to Emerson and Paul, and you know, I think to myself is that we could battle wheel to wheel like we demonstrated this afternoon. And I mean, no one really gave an inch, and it was safe, it was clean, it was professional, and you know, that's all credit to the people at the table here, and I congratulate them both.
Tracy then sneaking onto the leaderboard in 5th after that great victory. His teammate Fittipaldi up to 2nd above Roel Bossel, but still up front, the world champion Nigel Mansell.
So there you have it. I think we had quite an exciting race in the lead, 2nd, and then fighting for 2nd like crazy with Emo, and just being beaten at the end by the Penske chassis and Emo. We've definitely got to pay some catch up with the Lola car. The Penske team has done a fantastic job, and their car's working really well. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll catch up with us in Toronto next week.
So across the border to Canada next, where Tracy fancies his chances.
You know, it's my hometown. I have a lot of friends and a lot of support coming from the race, and I really like to try to do well there and try to win the race. That's, you know, for me, that's like going, Nigel going to Silverstone to race. You know, for me to win there would be almost the same amount of thrills for Nigel to win at Silverstone in front of his hometown. And you know, I think I'm really looking forward to it.
Of the 16 IndyCar races, 3 are staged outside the USA. One at Surfers Paradise in Australia, later in the season at Vancouver, and here, race 9 in Toronto. Toronto's a sporting city, with their baseball team, the Blue Jays, after years in the doldrums, coming through to win last year's World Series. Their home stadium, the Skydome, features a retractable roof. Perfect conditions, whatever the weather. The city's skyline is dominated by the spectacular CN Tower. At 553 meters, it's the world's tallest freestanding structure. It houses the world's largest revolving restaurant. And from here, there's a great view of the 1.78-mile, 11-turn temporary street circuit around Exhibition Place. Again, it's a circuit that Nigel had never previously seen. The world champion's first duty of the week saw him meet yet more of his growing army of fans at the local Kmart supermarket, where they obviously hold him in high esteem. An Englishman topping the charts ahead of some of the greatest names in world sporting history.
Compromise, sit down, that's what happened.
You take care, huh?
Thank you. Good luck on Sunday.
Thank you.
I've got pole position again.
Red 5, there you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You take care.
Thank you.
As usual, there was a real mix of nationalities, including many Britons and a lot of young fans.
There we are. How old are you? 6, a big 6, eh? Yeah, one of those and one of these as well. What's the bill?
Phil.
Phil.
There you go. Great. He's a big fan, believe me, him and his dad.
Thank you, huh? You take care, huh?
Put your hands on the steering wheel, Chris.
A dream come true for one Mini Mansell. Invited by Nigel, he tried the Lola cockpit for size.
You can see Nigel tomorrow at the track. He's coming to see you tomorrow, Nigel.
Sometimes it's as grueling out of the car as it is in it. Nigel signed hundreds of autographs for over 2 hours before leaving for the circuit in style.
How's your wrist, Nigel?
Once again, the school holidays mean that Nigel and Roseanne's children, Greg, Leo and Chloe, are on the scene. And there's a hug for both boys as Nigel prepared for his first look at the circuit.
Hey, I thought you wouldn't be far away.
Practice began early on Friday morning. The weather was clear with no chance of rain. In the shadow of the CN Tower, Red 5 was pushed into action by the Newman Haas crew. The team had won the previous 2 IndyCar races in Toronto with Michael Andretti at the wheel in 1991 and 1992. But this was a different car, driven by a man with no experience of the track. It soon became evident that the car was not performing as expected. Nigel was having problems with his Lola Ford. At one point, the car came to a halt on the track and had to be push-started by the marshals. Race engineer Peter Gibbons listened as Nigel reported back.
Then the car would do this. In the faster.
The T-car, the spare, was ready. Nigel decided to give it a run to compare the two. Cars, like people, have different characters. 2 apparently similar cars often behave differently on the same circuit. And sure enough, going into the second corner, problems for Nigel Mansell. Nigel unhurt, but under Indy rules, he had to report to the medical center for a checkup. The car, though, was in considerably worse shape. It was brought back to the garage on a wrecker truck with the Newman Haas crew in close attendance. They'd have to get it fixed as quickly as possible so as to be ready for qualification in the afternoon.
Security's going to lead you in there.
Not supposed to go head on into the wall, are you? Tweak the wrist a little bit. Same old story, isn't it? When you've got a little bit of an injury, you tend to aggravate it, but going head on into the wall did aggravate the right hand this morning. I basically locked up the right front wheel and I tried to come off the brakes and it didn't unlock, and then when I knew I was going to go off, I tried to lock everything on, and it was just not enough time to try and spin the car or get the car around, and it's very, very quick entry there. You're doing probably 170 miles an hour going into a very tight corner. And you need a longer runoff area, which I've told them, which we can't have because of the monument there. But yeah, I hit quite hard, and I'm just happy that it was in my backup car, it wasn't the race car. Jim McGee, the team manager, thought that it might have been one of the oil lines or water line that was leaking a little bit. But I mean, I think that we just went in there a bit too quick, locked up, and it just went straight on, the car wouldn't turn. And we've got a big understeer problem here at the circuit anyway. How do I feel? I feel a bit sore, but we've got about 15 minutes before we try and go out to qualify in the first session. The track's very difficult to learn here. A lot of turns, a lot of blind corners, and there's a lot of marbles offline, and I think maybe I was a little bit offline too. There's a lot to sort of get up to speed on when you've never been to a place before, and I don't mind admitting today, Friday, whatever date it is, I'm struggling. But this afternoon, I just said to my oldest son, Leo, that if I can get in the first 3 or 4 this afternoon, I'll be happy. The Penske's are running very, very fast indeed. That's no surprise, and we've just got to work real hard and try and get close to them. See you later.
The Isle of Man flag was in evidence as the build-up to Friday qualifying began. And there's no doubt who he supports. They come from far and wide.
Good luck, Nigel. All right, mate. It's a long way to come. Go on, you win it. Sheffield's watching you.
Okay, back off, please. Give him room, please. Give him room.
All the way from Sheffield in England to see the man from Birmingham. Mansell Mania had hit Canada in a big way.
Back off, folks, please. Out of the way, please, sir. Out of the way, please. Let's go.
Nigel.
Let's go. Please. Let's go, guys. Let's go. Back it off, please. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go. Keep coming, keep coming. Out of the way, please. Out of the way, out of the way. Back. You go, get him.
Qualifying and back to the race car again. But setting up Red 5 for a track he'd never seen before was proving difficult. The circuit was bumpy and demanding, and the traffic a problem. Nigel's time put him well down the provisional starting grid.
I turn into the corner and the whole car's understeer is straight out towards you. When it starts to drift, then the whole back end and the whole car...
Back in the garage, the T-car was its normal shape again. It's essential to have 2 cars in running order to give the driver a decent chance, should anything else happen to the race car.
We've had a few problems, but the main problem is they've got no grip out there at all. So for my personal driving style, I can't attack the corners, and I'm having a big, big problem just getting around the corners. There's a difference between the backup engine and this engine. Just down the back straight, it's half a second difference, which would help us, but it won't give us a second and a half, which is what we're looking for. So we've got to put thinking caps on tonight, and we're going to change the car radically and put a different suspension on it again for tomorrow, and just hope for a better day. We'll see what happens there, and we'll be having long discussions with the engineers and just see whether we can come up with a solution. So until tomorrow, we'll have to wait and see.
Saturday dawned fine in Toronto. The day was devoted to practice and the second and final qualifying session. Nigel was desperate to find some more speed and handling on the car. It was an early start for the teams and drivers alike. The world champion took the opportunity for a tour of the pit lane. Teo Fabi's Lola Chevrolet had set the 4th fastest time on the previous day. Nigel was only 17th. Whatever made the difference, it wasn't the length of the car.
No, we don't want that one.
Nigel had his mind focused on making up for lost time in the practice session, crucial to make sure the car was in perfect trim for the qualifying later. The weather was warmer, the track more slippery, and as the saying goes, the best laid plans.
I've had a big shunt and a big right-hander. I'm okay. The car is... I don't believe this. The car just got away from me. I just got no grip at all. I'm getting out of the car. I've got a double headache, but fortunately the adrenaline is very good, and we'll get through the weekend, and then I've just got to pay attention the next couple of weeks at getting myself fit again. But these cars, I tell you, they're on a knife edge like this. I mean, you know, if you got them right here, they're very quick, but if you slip off the top of the slope, you know, you can lose a second, 2 seconds a lap. And I've got to be honest here and say I just haven't got the experience. I haven't got the experience to call upon, especially on a circuit like this. And, you know, the bumps on this circuit have caught us out. And, you know, the only nice thing is there is an answer. There's always an answer if you look hard enough. And it's satisfying when you find it. And that's why we're obviously a little bit more optimistic for this afternoon.
Red 5 was taken back to the garage for inspection. It had sustained serious damage to the left side suspension, too severe to be patched up for the race the following day. It was proving an expensive weekend for team boss Carl Haas, although the engineers were now convinced they knew the cause of the problem. The car had been bottoming out over the bumps far too often, making steering and control very difficult. Nigel waited for changes to be made to the spare car, which he now knew he'd be driving in the race on Sunday. The mechanics decided to alter the ride height of the car in an attempt to stop the bottom scraping the track surface so readily. As the practice session continued, Nigel left the pits to experiment with the new setup. Peter Gibbons and the rest of the crew had an anxious wait before Mansell returned with some more positive reports. The car and the tyres had performed much better, and he'd completed a lap in 59.275 seconds. That's an average of 108.106 miles an hour, 8th fastest of the session, and just 2/10 slower than the quickest man, Bobby Rahal. The earlier problems, while not being totally solved, were now more containable. And it was time for a debrief with race engineer Peter Gibbons and team manager Jim McGee.
You know, we should have kind of got the hint yesterday when you locked that front wheel and it skidded and it didn't flat spot the tire because the tire wasn't loaded.
That's why it didn't turn either.
I mean, I couldn't believe the black market left and why it didn't put a black market.
But I mean, we know now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a learning process. I mean, all the problems in my problem is I haven't got the experience here.
Oh, that's it.
That's the problem.
Had you been here?
I mean, I'm trying to get up to speed.
This is the difference.
I'll tell you what, it's so bumpy.
Nigel's racing boots were showing the strain, and he needed a new pair for the afternoon qualifying session. After great work by the crew, the spare car, which in effect was now the race car, had been fully repaired after Friday's crash, and everybody was more optimistic. And they had every reason to be. Nigel put in some very quick laps. His best was nearly half a second faster than he'd done in practice. A time of 58.832 seconds broke last year's track record set by Bobby Rahal. But incredibly, 8 other drivers went faster, and Nigel would start the race from 9th on the grid. The car at last appeared to be handling better.
Okay, thank you. Coming up.
Oh well, congratulations, we've got a car in one piece.
I'll be all right. I just got to keep on working away.
Almost didn't.
Really?
Marshall's on the first corner and running for their flipping loss.
Really?
Just to get everything.
Pole position went to Emerson Fittipaldi, who put in a superb lap very late in the session. Also on the front row, his Penske teammate Paul Tracy. Third fastest was Bobby Rahal, and alongside him on the second row, Danny Sullivan. Unusual, though, to see no Newman Haas representation at the press conference.
This is rather a different racetrack than Nigel's been used to. And being unable to test because it is a temporary road circuit, we kind of got off to a little bit of a bad start the first day, and we had a problem with the car as far as the ride height and knowing where we should be. And we had an incident which basically was not Nigel's fault, but we were running the car a little bit too low, and when the car would hit a bump, it would come down and bottom out, and he would lose the steering. And we had the first incident on Friday morning in the practice. That got us a little bit behind. And then we had another incident on Saturday morning, which got us a little bit behind, but then we found a direction, and actually we made a big gain in the morning practice before qualifying. And the qualifying, I think, really is not it's not what's going to be the reason of where he's going to run tomorrow. I think you're going to see a big change in our strategy tomorrow during the race, and I think we'll be in good shape.
Penske's then 1 and 2 on the grid at Toronto, and coming into the race in fine form after back-to-back wins at Portland and Cleveland. The early season dominance of Newman Haas was being seriously threatened.
Penske has, a very, very strong ongoing development program, and they're able to make big changes in a short period of time during the year, and they have got a good car this year. They've come up with a good balance. The cars are very reliable, and the Chevrolet engine now has, reached a point where it's very competitive with the Ford. So, the package that they have right now is very competitive. We're in the middle still of working with our development bits and pieces. We're going to have a few more development bits and pieces for Michigan, and it's an ongoing program, but I feel like right now we have to also keep our reliability and our race finishing, and we have to rely on Nigel's ability to outdrive some of these drivers, and he's capable of doing that. So we're not panicking. We're not going to change our game plan. We've got a lead in the points now, and we're just going to continue on and do the best job that we can as far as finishing and the reliability of the cars. But the team is a great team. We've had a great finishing record this year, and with Nigel becoming more and more familiar with the series and the drivers and the cars, I think it's going to be an exciting finish.
A successful but grueling season so far for Nigel Mansell. What were his plans for next season? Would he be staying in IndyCar racing?
Basically that Carl and I are having onward conversations, and unlike previous years, there's no hurry on either side to rush into anything, and we're paying very careful attention to what's happening this year, and things are very good, very positive, but as of this time, nothing is happening.
There's also been speculation that you possibly might be considering setting up your own team. Is there any truth in that?
I'd rather not pass comment on things like that. I mean, we've got to put all our concentration into this race this weekend in Toronto and getting the job done. And, there's always a lot of speculation in so many things. And I think the throwaway line, which started that rumour, was someone came up to me and said, well, if someone gives you 20 or 30 million, would you consider setting up your own team? And the answer is, on the throwaway line, yes, you would consider it. That doesn't mean you're going to do it. So, I mean, that answers that.
Sure. I mean, here we are, we're halfway through the season. You are winning the championship. I mean, what are your thoughts generally on the season so far?
Very, very tough, and getting tougher as every day that goes past, and certainly every race that goes past. We're right up against it. I think everybody can see from the last few races that the Penske team is the team to beat. Their chassis is definitely quite considerably quicker than the Lola cars and any other car in the field. From here on in, we're halfway. This is the 9th race. You know, I've got a very small lead, which is ever decreasing, and we've just got to see what happens today, and then just try and work on our competitiveness for the next races. People forget that Emerson is in his 10th year in the IndyCar series. Everywhere he's been there at least 10 times and more, and you know, he's fired up. He's fired up more than when I ever saw him in Formula One, and he's obviously driving extremely well. So, and you mustn't forget that he's ex-twice world Formula One champion, and I think a lot of people have underestimated that he's got a lot more fire in his belly than the last probably 3 or 4 years when he was in Formula One.
A record crowd at Toronto of over 66,000 packed the grandstands. They saw another ex-Formula One man, Bertrand Gachot, a new face in IndyCar racing, having joined Dick Simon's team. Gachot drove for LaRousse and Jordan in Formula One and won Le Mans for Mazda. For Nigel Mansell, the usual traffic jam on the way to the grid. Nigel having snatched a moment to see his great pal Greg Norman win the Open at Sandwich.
Fantastic thing is I'm starting the race in real good spirits because Greg has just won the British Open. Commiserations to Nick, but I think he's won enough for the time being. Greg, fantastic win. I think the crowd there were marvellous.
And as they come through, we've got green, and we're under racing conditions.
The Penskes on the front row away sharply. Fittipaldi ahead of Tracy, Mansell starting from 9th, ahead of the first midfield incident in the race. When Andrea Montemini spun off and into retirement with 10 of the 103 laps completed. The resulting logjam brought out the yellow flags. It was caution for 4 laps. Nigel had to be patient in the pack, knowing that his main championship challenger, Emerson Fittipaldi, had made a great start. From the green, though, it was Fittipaldi's teammate, Paul Tracy, who surged into the lead to the delight of the home supporters. Penske 1 and 2, Tracy ahead of Fittipaldi. Nigel's first pit stop. He came in from 8th place. This was expert work by the Newman-Haas crew. But Penske's pitmen were on form too. Fittipaldi in and out rapidly as he regained the lead from Tracy. The veteran Brazilian stayed ahead for 34 laps. It was just not going to be Nigel's day. More problems to plague him.
Lost all brake pressure over. Did you try turning in the boost adjuster? First I'm getting 42.5, 43, and it's dropping down to 37. Okay, there's nothing we can do. You just gotta try and keep running. I've tried going in, I've tried coming out. I've got no boost. Hit, Nigel, in. Come in, I'm coming in. We'll take a look, see what it is.
Having established that there was nothing to be done to improve matters, retirement on lap 55 was the only option. A wastegate problem, the cause. No points from Toronto, the effect. On lap 78, a quick pit stop for Tracy, who swept on to win his 2nd race in succession. The first major international victory for a Canadian in Canada since Gilles Villeneuve in 1978 at the Montreal Grand Prix. Joy and delight in the Penske pit. Tracy the winner. Fittipaldi came home in 2nd place, 13 seconds behind and a second ahead of 3rd place Danny Sullivan. Fittipaldi's 16 points for 2nd place, lifting him to the top of the championship ahead of Nigel Mansell by 3, with Paul Tracy now in 4th place. Not a good weekend for Nigel and the team.
It's just one of those things. It's the first mechanical we've had all year. The car wasn't right and the engine wasn't performing right from the word go, and obviously the wastegate was cracked, and it just got worse and worse.
But amidst the euphoria for Trace's win in his hometown, controversy as well. The IndyCar chairman Bill Stoken took the opportunity to reply to criticism of his series by Formula One's Bernie Ecclestone.
My first reaction was that Mr. Ecclestone must have been grossly misquoted, because I've had great admiration for what Mr. Ecclestone has achieved, both as a businessman and also building Formula One. Since I've also seen the tape, I know he was not misquoted, and I'm not sure what to make out of it. As a businessman, I have always said to all the people who work with me on my staff that I never really measure my own success to be complete until my biggest competitor starts to get nervous about what I'm doing. So I don't know. I mean, maybe this is the beginning of some dialogue on the fact that the IndyCar series is indeed becoming a potential threat to Formula One. It's kind of very difficult to respond to that kind of criticism. I mean, it's almost as silly as me trying to sit down and say, well, the technology has gone so far. You know, it's 80% technology and 20% driver. You know, as a child, I used to have a radio-controlled car, and I don't know if, you know, if Formula One is becoming a radio-controlled car for adults. You know, there are many ways you can criticize this. And I don't know what the objective is to criticize it. I think Formula One is a fine racing series. I think we have a product that is obviously something that stands on its own. Everybody always kept on talking about IndyCar racing as the American equivalent of Formula 3000 or what have you. I guess Formula 3000 was established to find drivers for Formula One. Now it seems like Formula One is becoming a good training ground for IndyCar drivers.
Back at his adopted hometown, Clearwater in Florida, Nigel had a brush with the law. He'd been invited by his local police force to star in a road safety campaign encouraging Florida residents to buckle up.
Well, welcome to the hometown of Clearwater. Here we are, we're having a little bit of fun this morning. It's something very serious with the police force at Clearwater. We're basically doing a seatbelt commercial, and you're seeing behind the scenes. We'll be having a little bit of fun and a lot of seriousness at the same time, but as you can see, it's a beautiful day. Here we are, Wednesday. We fly off literally first thing in the morning. I'm taking off at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to basically now the fastest super speedway of the year here in the Indianapolis racing. With the changes they did at Indianapolis this year, they made it a little bit slower, but the Michigan 500, as it's known, is very, very quick indeed. So this is what we do the day before. And as you can see, the SWAT vehicle, the SWAT vehicle has just been set off. That's perfect. Hi, I'm Nigel Mansell, the driver for the Newman-Haas team in the IndyCar race series. And the only reason I'm able to be here today to speak to you is because I buckle up and use a seatbelt. It saved my life so many times in high-speed smashes and slow-speed smashes. So the message is, please use the seatbelt. And don't forget, it is the law.
Mission accomplished, and a pretty impressive performance too. Perhaps Nigel's been taking lessons from Paul Newman.
Prefer tea or coffee?
Next stop after a cuppa, the airport and the world's fastest racetrack. The normally gentle and languid pace of life in rural Michigan in the American Midwest is disturbed each year by the staging of the Marlboro 500. It's a dauntingly fast super speedway, no respecter of reputations. 10 years ago, John Paul Jr. and Rick Mears escaped serious injury after a massive collision. A year later, Tony Bettenhausen and Howdy Holmes were involved in another horrendous crash. Again, the drivers survived without serious injury. And that same year, Alonso Jr. and Chip Ganassi found big trouble. Amazingly, although the cars were written off, the drivers were back racing a week later. Michigan 93, and Nigel Mansell arrives for the drivers' briefing. the only time at this circuit he'll be told to turn right. This was a big race for Nigel. After losing the lead in the championship, it was now vital that he kept up the pressure on the Penske drivers, who've been outstanding in the last 2 races. Nigel hadn't won a race since the beginning of June, so there was plenty for the world champion to muse over before the qualifying began. Meanwhile, Paul Tracy was looking for a hat-trick of wins and his first ever on an oval. In the pit road, the Newman-Haas team held a summit meeting and compared notes.
The other good thing is we know what full tanks do, so.
And just 2 pit boxes away, Emerson Fittipaldi pondered the possibilities of securing his first win at Michigan since 1985. Carl Haas. His team last won this event back in 1989 with Michael Andretti. Long overdue, another victory at Michigan. Nigel's team manager, Jim McGee, bags of experience here with Mario Andretti and Rick Mears.
As I'm going past on my second time, as I come out of 4, let me know that the next time by is the lap, alright? Because that will remind me to really stand on it. Bye, I'll say green flag next time by.
And stand on it, he certainly did. Nigel's strong showing in practice continued in qualifying with an excellent run round the demanding 2-mile oval. He wasn't completely satisfied with his performance at turns 1 and 2, but he was better than everyone else in the field. And his advice for dealing with the bumpy surface? Make sure your tongue's nowhere near your teeth. The car had been set up perfectly, and the Newman-Haas crew had done a fine job. Nigel had managed to improve on the previous qualifying best of 230.150 miles an hour set last year by Mario Andretti. And the proof was right there on the onboard computer display. An excellent time.
We just finished qualifying, and we just done 233.4 miles an hour, fastest ever recorded lap round here. Absolutely fantastic. I'd have been a little bit happier if I could have kept my eyes open round 1 and 2, and then halfway round 3 the bump was so hard that shuts the eyes again. But I mean, we kept our foot in there, and we did the time, and I just hope it stands. But obviously very happy at this time.
Then, as if to prove the Newman-Haas supremacy at Michigan, Nigel's teammate Mario Andretti then reeled off a sensational lap, 234.275 miles an hour, a world record on a closed course.
Dan, how's that look?
All of this was an eye-opener for the Formula One driver Thierry Boutsen, a veteran of 161 Grand Prix. He wasn't used to seeing such incredible times. Now he's trying to set up a deal so that he can test his abilities in the IndyCar Series next year. But the unpredictability of it all was underlined when the pre-race favorite and 1990 winner Alan Jr. could only qualify 17th.
The Michigan 500 is just a survival race. And the year that I won it, I survived. And I had a great duel with my teammate Bobby Rahal at the time, and we were going back and forth, and it was great. But if you're running well going into the race, and then you survive, then you're going to do all right.
Well, I think it's a very special track. It's a high bank type of corners that you need the car to be so precise, so good grip all around. And if you have a perfect car, you enjoy the race. If you have a not so good car, you have a nightmare. I mean, it'll be a disaster, the race.
Newman-Haas cars occupying the front row of the grid for the first time in 1993. Lyondike and Bosell on row 2. Tracy and Goodyear on row 3. Goodyear won last year from Tracy. Fittipaldi in 15th place. 250 laps, 500 miles.
If you have more than 2 yellows, we'll have a nice milky cup of tea halfway round.
They're coming on to the main straightaway. Jameson Douglas both rising way green, and we've got a race. 800 kilometers, 250 laps around this Michigan International Speedway.
Clean, good start. Aaron Lyondike making a good start too from the second row there.
Indeed, he's passed Nigel Mansell temporarily. Boiselle lines up in 4th very, very quickly. And now it's Mansell trying to take that position back from Arie Luyendyk in the early part of this race. This is the sort of racing we're going to see all afternoon long, and you can see now the view from one of our corner cameras.
Believe it or not, that's a lap down already. Just shows you how quick they get around this 2-mile track.
30 to 35 seconds around. We're expecting to have these cars pit within the first 32 laps or so. But remember, this track produces a lot of yellow flags. Mario is up front with a 34.5 second first lap, followed by Leyendyk, who's being chased very, very closely by Nigel Mansell.
Nigel Mansell yesterday in a press conference said, after doing such a good job in qualifying, he doesn't like this track on full tanks. It's got some nasty spots on the track, and he does not like it. It's not friendly towards him.
And now he's taken back that second position from Leyendyk. Very typical. Depending on the line you use, you will take or lose a position in this track. In third place is Raul Boisel. Raul is followed closely by Scott Goodyear. And after Goodyear will come Paul Tracy. Now Emo on your screen, 8th place. He started in 15th, and now he's beginning to pass some of the back markers.
Great start for Emo. Started 15th, now up to 8th. Still a long, long way to go. A lot of pit stops in this race too.
Mansell is now chasing his teammate very, very closely and makes a pass on the outside. Here's the in car on Mansell's car.
Oh, getting awfully close there.
Oh, very, very close. And they're about to overtake also David Goodrave, and Mansell takes a position and takes a lead.
Nigel Mansell, who is supposedly learning the super speedways and ovals this year, has just been incredible on these ovals.
So Nigel into an early lead. However, his first pit stop of the race proved to be mistimed. Just 20 seconds later, Stefan Johansson crashed out. There was a full course yellow, and Emerson Fittipaldi, who'd stayed out on the track, was able to take his first pit stop under that yellow flag and move into third place. But Nigel's main championship rival saw his luck run out following the restart. Terrible technical problems forced Emo to take 3 pit stops in 8 minutes, effectively ending his challenge. Mario Andretti also came close to a pit lane disaster, but proved that you can make your own luck. Out on the track, Nigel Mansell was doing much the same thing.
As we see Mansell pass Tracy. Tracy being lapped another time. He's now down 2 laps. This is just unbelievable. Mansell is doing a Tracy on Tracy.
For Paul Tracy, there was worse to come. An early exit from him and for the Penske team, an end to their hopes of 3 consecutive victories.
There you see Mario trying to get a lap back off Nigel Mansell.
And he does, so far. For the moment. Boy, unbelievable. It looks like Fittipaldi's making more stops than laps today.
Well, he's just slugging away, staying out there trying to get as many points as he can and hoping that the rest of the field kind of goes out with attrition.
Up front, Nigel was leading, but it was tough going.
Nigel, in. Plus 1 lap on the field, Nigel. Plus 1 lap on the field. This is absolutely killing me.
At his 5th pit stop, Nigel's drinks bottle contained soluble aspirin to help him through the latter part of the grueling race.
I don't feel too good. Hey, we got about 85 laps to go. You don't reset the meter if you want.
Mario Andretti's stop was quicker, so he unlapped himself. A 3rd yellow caution flag after 205 laps enables Jim McGee to call Nigel in for fuel, a useful opportunity for a splash and dash.
Can we go without stopping now? You have to come in. You have to come in.
Feeling sick with a rotten headache, Nigel soldiered on, but only just avoiding stalling at the restart. He rejoined ahead of Mario Andretti, but at the rear of the field, as the yellow held until lap 211. Once the race restarted, Nigel stepped up the pace.
Mansell trying to put cars in between himself and his teammate. He loves him so much. At this point, he just wants to put some miles, distance, and cars between the two cars.
And metal, yeah. Actually, he's probably out there looking for Hiro Matsushita. Where is he? Where is he? Get that guy between them. Oh, there we go.
Three abreast.
Emo, Bosell, and Mario. Mario getting past Bosell. Trying to get by Emo and close that gap up between himself and the leader, Nigel Mansell. This is, what, about 18 laps to go?
Yes, indeed.
Going to be a good dash for the cash here.
I'm sorry, it's 28 laps to go. 28 laps to go, and the gap between Mansell and Andretti is 4¼ seconds. So it's actually opening up a bit. Ooh,
Mario
Bosell
goes
blocked.
very high. I don't think Bosell saw him, and Bosell started to go high himself. There you see Ross Bentley in a 4-car sandwich.
Mario makes the most of it, passes them all. There's also Scott Goodyear. Scott Goodyear and Boisel, 4th and 5th. Goodyear a lap down from Boisel.
That lap traffic seemed to play into Nigel's favor just a little bit. And now Mario is 8.15 seconds behind. Yeah, it's going to be a great career boost for him. Nigel Mansell coming here, supposed to be the world champion, #1, so much quicker than everybody else. Mario's 53 years old. The first time he sat on the pole here in Michigan was 25 years ago. And he's still out there running just as quick as them, and only, what, 8-point-something seconds behind the leader, and flying past all these other young up-and-coming guns. And he's still got it.
And he still loves it. Indeed, when he raced here, when he got the pole here a few years back, this track began holding races here that were less than 500 miles in length. That first 500-mile race was held back in 1983. Theo Fabi got the pole. John Paul Jr. won that race.
Yeah, we've had some odd winners here in Michigan. Pancho Carter, Gordon Johncock, John Paul Jr. won here in his one rare. Well, I think he's had a couple of wins. There you see the team owners. Paul Newman, Carl Haas. Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid.
So let's do the rundown. Mansell up front. Mario Andretti 11.7 seconds behind in second place. A lap down, you'll find Arie Luyendyk. Raul Boisel is a further lap down. Scott Goodyear. And Theo Fabi 4 laps down. Paul Newman and Carl Haas anticipating victory, as Mansell has only 3 more laps to go to win this one. He's about 1.5 minutes away from winning this race. Race has now lasted 2 hours and 38 minutes. That is well on its way. This could be a record speed race. I don't think it's going to come up to the 220 miles per hour that Mario anticipated at the beginning of the race. But it might just be near the 210 to 215 mile an hour range. That's over 330 to 350 kilometers per hour. 248 laps down for Nigel Mansell, coming around to see the white flag being waved by Jim Swintel. Here you see the white flag.
I was saying earlier in the weekend, just in conversation, it's not often you go to a super speedway in North America and see British flags being waved around, because normally at NASCAR events, of course, you don't see that. Now here on an IndyCar event, quite a few flags up in the stands being waved, and these two, of course, going to be waving 2 of the biggest flags if Nigel can pull this off.
There you go, off turn 4, and before he sees the Union Jack, you'll see a prettier sight, the checkered flag. Nigel Mansell running away with this one from the front row, takes the Michigan 500.
Great job. That really puts us up in the points. Super.
It was later established that Nigel was suffering from a gastric bug, causing complete dehydration. He lost 8 pounds during the race.
Monaco is a tough race, the hardest race we've ever had in Brazil in 120 degrees heat. This is tougher. I mean, it's tougher on the machinery, it's tougher on the driver. And, you know, it's just been a complete new experience from every aspect, both from the heat, the physical part, getting beaten up a bit, you know, and then the amount of pit stops and just getting everything to go right. It was, I can tell you, truly moving, exciting, and
a little bit bewildering at times.
So Nigel Mansell back into the lead of the IndyCar Championship after a punishing 500 miles at Michigan. Emerson Fittipaldi down second, 18 points adrift after the Penskes failed to pick up a point from the race. A disappointment for team boss Roger Penske on his own circuit.
The Fords had a little better, more horsepower there at Michigan than we had, but we were not handling right. We were not. I said if we don't have our foot down through turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, it's difficult to know how fast you're going to go down the straightaway, and I think that we just didn't have the right setup.
But the quality of the championship battle between Mansell and Fittipaldi cannot be denied.
Well, Emerson has a great respect for Nigel, and I think it's the same with Nigel and Emerson. Now, they raced wheel to wheel. They give each other room. Obviously, they're both running for the championship. It's kind of ironic to see two world champions and now racing for the championship in kart, but you'd expect that out of true champions, and certainly Mansell brings that reputation here, and Emerson, he's driven for us. He's one of the finest drivers ever run for me. He seems to be able to deliver when he has to, and that's what's important.
And now it seems that the championship battle will go right to the last race of the season at Laguna Seca in October.
I would say this, that each week it's going to have more intrigue in it. It's the race this weekend in New Hampshire is going to be a different type race. Then we go on to some road circuits, got Nazareth. I think people should stay tuned to see what's going to happen.
A brilliant performance then by Nigel, who throughout the race was feeling less than 100%. But he'd seen it through to win his first 500 miles on a super speedway, one of the best wins of his whole career. There wasn't much time to dwell on it though. The following weekend, the IndyCar Series continued in New England at the New Hampshire International Speedway, opened last year. 4 days after leaving Michigan, Nigel and the team were unloading at Loudon.
My thoughts on this weekend, honestly, is I just want to get through the weekend, stay out of trouble, try and beat my opposition. You know, that is to say, get more points than Emerson, more points than Mario, Raul Boesel. And then if someone else wins the race, I mean, I don't honestly mind. I've got to get myself up to speed, but I'm just looking at the people which are close to me in the championship points challenge. This is going to be a tough one. I say that because it's a very smooth circuit. It's only a mile oval. The distance between pole position and probably 10th place is going to be only a couple of tenths of a second. And as we saw in Milwaukee, when I qualified 8th on the grid, the difference between 2nd place and 8th place was only 2/10 of a second. So it's very, very important, vitally important, that we get the car set up just right, and then for qualifying we get a good set of tyres to do that time, because on these short mile ovals it is so important to qualify well.
Nigel Mansell taking the realistic view, and the experienced eyes of Peter Gibbons watched as he switched into qualifying mode. The championship leader had just been pipped in practice by Raul Boesel by 0.18 of a second. Qualifying was different. He put in a flyer that beat everyone for his 5th pole of the season. Boesel came close, just 6/1000th of a second adrift, and shared the front row with Nigel. With Canadian Scott Goodyear on the 2nd row with compatriot Paul Tracy, that meant the first American started from row 3. The great minds of IndyCar, the boss of Ford Motorsport, Mike Cranefuss, with Carl Haas and Roger Penske. Next year, Cranefuss will be running his own IndyCar team. All weekend, the world champion was in relaxed mood. No sign of midlife crisis here, even though he turned 40 on race day.
When I was trying to make it in motor racing at the age of about 21, 22, and there's a couple of English journalists here, know for a fact that I stayed 25 for 5 years. So I stayed 25 for 5 years in all the magazines and everything, but then unfortunately it catches up with you, doesn't it, Malcolm and Graham? So all of a sudden, from when you're about sort of 32, you shoot to 37, and here we are now closing the door at 40, so... But no, I'll be happy to have a birthday present. I know these gentlemen will be kind to me tomorrow.
The event was marked in the traditional manner. Everyone, it seemed, wanted a slice of the action. Nigel's family, Roseanne, and the children, Chloe, Leo, and Greg, were there, of course.
Good morning to you. What can I say? It is the 8th month. And yes, unfortunately, I was born in 1953. So I hope you like the hat. I think you can read it. I think it's quite apt actually. I look 30, 28, act 20, which is probably reasonable, feel like 60, which is an understatement at times. So I must be 40, so I think that's good. And I got two gentlemen to my left, which is Mark and Peter, and Peter here, it's his 21st birthday today, and they've travelled all over here from England, from Manchester. So would you like to say a few words to some people over there in England?
Just want to say hi to everyone. Best luck to Nigel today. Hope you do well in the race. Another victory.
Same again. This is a life. Can't believe what's happening here. With our hero, come all the way to see him. Worth every cent.
Another good omen for the birthday boy, perhaps. A win in the Indy Lights race for an Englishman, Steve Robertson. He received some sound tactical advice from Nigel before the race, used it well, and collected the rewards as a result. His third win in 8 races so far. He's now third in the championship. Out of the pits for the 200-lap, 211-mile race, Nigel had been proved right about the competitiveness. The top 16 qualifiers were covered by a second. Nigel led the early stages, while Paul Tracy worked his way up from 4th to 2nd, ahead of Bosell and Goodyear. The battle was joined, and Tracy stole into the lead for the first time on lap 41, as Fittipaldi came through the field, heading for 3rd place, having started 13th. The traffic was certain to be a factor on the 1-mile oval. Experienced drivers used the back markers as a barrier between themselves and opponents. This was a tremendous high-speed duel between Nigel and Paul Tracy. It brought the 42,000 crowd to its feet. The pair of them finding gaps in the traffic that just didn't seem to be there. Only 4 cars on the lead lap at half distance. Tracy, Mansell, Fittipaldi and Bosell. But the Brazilian, after being overtaken by the leading trio, lost control and crashed out of the race. Under caution, Red 5 called into the pits for fuel and tyres. But problems. A cross-threaded wheel nut on the front right delayed departure. No panic from the crew, but valuable time and 2nd place lost. It didn't deter the champion.
I think these guys would be nice to me on my birthday, wouldn't you? Tell everybody, no problem, we're going to have a bit of fun there if the car's right. We'll see what we can do at the restart.
25 laps remaining. Tracy leads from Fittipaldi. Nigel in 3rd is poised to pounce.
And Nigel's right there.
Yeah, Nigel's coming right up on the down the backstretch.
Moving on the inside.
Brian Till's going to get in the way as they come through turn 3 and turn 4.
Now moving on the outside. They're asking Hiro Matsushita once again to move out. Here's Nigel. Here we go. And there's no space.
Oh, way below the yellow line.
3 cars going where only 2 cars can go.
He's got the speed and momentum coming out of turn 2, though. He's going to make a move going down the backstretch and going into turn 3. You can see him carry the speed.
And Mo has to let go. He has to let go, and he drops to 3rd for the moment. It might be a situation where the setup of a car at this point with the changing track conditions might favor Mansell.
Brian Till making a drastic move to get out of the way there, right in front of Hiro Matsushita. Now Nigel manages to get Till between himself and Mo. On board once again with Nigel Mansell.
And up front, there you see Paul Tracy, 1.34 seconds ahead of him. That's his aim, that's his goal. Paul Tracy has to hang on. He has the pressure of Mansell right behind him. They both pitted at the same time. So they've got about the same fuel. It's a matter of fuel consumption at this point. The question is, if Tracy anticipates trouble with fuel, then Mansell almost, by definition, will probably have the same problem, even though the Ford is thought to have a bit of an edge on fuel consumption.
It's supposed to be a little bit more efficient. It's got more horsepower, though. Or so the Chevy guys say. Ford will never admit to that. It looks like Nigel's actually got the better, even though Tracy's leading. It looks to me like, oh, he's coming up on some traffic. That's going to cost him some time. But it looks to me like Nigel has got the better of the 2 cars and the better of the situation. I think within the next 4 or 5 laps, you're going to start to see Nigel really pour on the power.
Indeed, and there are only 14 laps left as he goes through lap traffic. There you see now Mo coming up, reeling in that Nigel. As if it weren't enough, Nigel was putting pressure on Tracy, now it's Mo. So the fish are eating the fish here as they go by Mike Groff, a lap car. Mike Groff having a good race. Actually only 3 spots behind team owner Bobby Rahal. Rahal is in 8th and Groff in 11th.
Emerson Fittipaldi having a good weekend. Generally, although qualifying and stuff wasn't very good, but I mean generally having a good weekend. A lot of important sponsors and Benetton people here, and orange juice growers and orange growers. Emma, of course, involved in about 15 different businesses, as is his team owner, Roger Penske, who's got every kind of car dealership there is, along with the truck rental deals.
Tracy puts Rahal between himself and Mansell. Mansell moves on the inside, no problem.
Mansell seems awfully quick going into turn 1 and also into turn 3.
Oh, that's close. That is close. Rahal has to back off, as well as Nigel Mansell. They're going through some back markers. Very, very close. As they come around, only 11 laps to go. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be one great finish.
You really can see how the traffic plays in the situation. A moment ago, Emerson Fittipaldi was right up underneath Nigel Mansell. Now he's 2 or 3 car lengths back, and then Nigel Mansell makes the move.
He does.
On Paul Tracy going down the backstretch as
Johnny
Paul Tracy
Unser
comes up behind Scott Brayton.
Johnny Unser on the inside, but it's not done.
Now
it's not
Tracy
done.
gets by again.
Brayton moves to the inside, and he blocks Mansell. Great racing. And now Brayton's getting all sorts of signals. Get out of the way, saying, which way? Which way am I supposed to get out of the way?
Well, remember, his car's only set up a certain way, and he's only got certain places he can go that he can keep the car under control. He can't just suddenly go to a new line he's not been driving all day. Otherwise, he would have been driving on it.
I'll tell you, Scott Brayton, who's in 6th position right now, is so happy that he's let these 2 go by. The pressure's off him. Now the pressure is on Paul Tracy as they come up. There's Alan Jr. There's also Willie T. Ribbs. These back markers. Now Tracy has to make a decision. He cuts on the inside, threats those 2, and Mansell follows right behind them. And he's very, very close now.
You know, this is a question here. Alan Jr. Time for payback from Long Beach. Junior said, what comes around goes around. And there's still talk as to whether he may actually take care of Nigel at one of these races.
Well, he missed an opportunity right there. There's only 7 laps to go. And Paul Tracy is just hanging on.
About 3.5 minutes, hanging on for dear life, trying to stay out there, keep the lead. Obviously going to defend it as much as you can. There's been a lot of talk about blocking. And at all the drivers' meetings this year, they've talked about blocking. You basically are allowed to defend your position once a lap on an oval.
Well, I think Paul Tracy, with all this lap traffic, is going to have to defend his position constantly. There's Brian Till. Once again, they're lapping him on the outside. No problem for both drivers. And here's Mansell on the outside, taking the high road. But there's no chance. Tracy's blocking, no question about it. Look at that. Look at that move on the outside.
Yeah, he's going to keep pushing them out there, too. Stay out there, Nigel. Get caught up behind.
Oh, this is it. Mansell takes the lead with 4 laps to go. What a move. No question that Mansell has the best setup and perhaps even more horsepower here. And he's taking that position, and Tracy is not challenging yet. Oh, here's Griard. Watch out. Nigel has to be very careful. Now it's Tracy that's putting the heat on him on the outside.
Nigel doing a bit of a weave job there.
That's close.
That is very close for open wheel racing at 162 miles an hour as they go into that, or come out of that corner. Down the backstretch, 3 laps to go. Tracy right behind Nigel Mansell. This is for the win at the New Hampshire 200 on the new New Hampshire International Speedway. Paul Tracy trying to make up that gap.
2 laps to go. Unbelievable. With only 3 laps to go, Nigel Mansell finally makes the move, takes the lead again. For the 3rd time in this race, he started out up front for the first 40 laps, and in lap 67, he came back up front for about 26 laps, and now back again up front.
Going to see the white flag displayed here, signifying 1 lap to go. This is the last chance for Paul Tracy. Emerson Fittipaldi is going to have to settle for 3rd place. Paul Tracy looks like he's unable to make up that gap. Nigel Mansell just seems a little quicker down the backstretch, and at this point, Paul Tracy is nowhere near enough to make a move. You can only hope someone's right in front of Nigel, but there is not anyone there.
Indeed, as they come around this turn 4, they're coming around. The checkered flag is ready. Jim Santal waves both flags, and Nigel Mansell scores his 2nd consecutive win.
What a birthday present you gave us. Great job, great job. Fantastic. What a great race that was. Fantastic, Paul. Fantastic, Emerson.
Sportsmanship aplenty after the race, competitive in the extreme. Paul Tracy acknowledging another brilliant win for Nigel Mansell. And the family there soon after for a fair share of hugs from Dad. And Chloe was the first in line.
This was pure racing at its best, gentlemen. I mean, you know, I've been in some races in the past. I've been wheel to wheel at 200 miles an hour with Ayrton Senna, and I tell you, it doesn't even come close to what we've done today, I don't think.
Once he got by in the turn, it was just equal all the way around. I ran my quickest lap of the race on the last lap, and I'm sure that Nigel did, and it was just you know, the last 10 laps was white knuckle. You know, let's get it on racing, and it was serious racing.
Very happy. I mean, what a birthday present that was. Absolute magnificent race. Thoroughbred racing, wheel to wheel. Those last 10 laps, in fact, the last 50 laps after the last yellow was just incredible. But I mean, just an astonishing day, a very happy one for everybody, and it's so rewarding to see the mechanics, the spectators, the sponsors, just so enthusiastic, and of course, I've got to repeat myself again, so extremely happy.
And so Nigel's championship lead extended to 25 points over Fittipaldi. 11 rounds completed, only 5 to go, just one oval. Is that an advantage for Nigel? After back-to-back victories on oval tracks? Perhaps not. What a debut season it's turning out to be for Nigel Mansell. Paul Newman and Carl Huss's investment in the world's top racing driver has paid off with 4 great victories thus far. But it's not over yet. Join us for the next installment.